David Cleandon.
Thank you, Mr Chair. I'm pleased to take a short call to speak in support of this excellent bill. So before I deal with some of the detail of the provisions, I'd just like to make two observations about the government's objection to it. It seems to be the first point they are insisting on is that this bill is unnecessary, that the provisions within the bill are already covered off by existing legislation. That presupposes the drafter of the bill, Mr Parker, is given to flights of fancy, has an overactive imagination. None of these characteristics are evident in my experience of Mr Parker. I think it cannot be denied by anyone who is actually observing the New Zealand workplace that contractors, so-called contractors, are often at a distinct disadvantage. So the second concern we've heard from our friends in the National Party on the government benches is about the intense complexity of this bill. So it runs to some 14 clauses, scarcely 6 pages of text. I recall when Simon Powell was Minister, he was putting through a lot of legislation to re-regulate the finance industry. They were complex bills, and I say this having sat on the Commerce Committee at the time. They were extraordinarily complex. It in a sense bothers me, concerns me that the combined intellectual horsepower of these fine folk we see here this evening considers this to be a complex bill. Quite extraordinary. It's extraordinarily straightforward, in fact, and I can say I speak with a level of experience. I've been an employer, an employee, and indeed I have also worked as a contractor, on a very fair rate, I might add. But the problem is that often people working as contractors are working at a distinct disadvantage. There is a significant power imbalance between those seeking to earn their way in the world and those who are in a position to employ them as contractors, to contract to them. This very straightforward, easily understood bill, I think, seeks to even out that field, to even up the situation a little and to make it a fairer situation. 4B, this section 4B of the bill, fairly straightforward, I would have thought. Matters must be taken into account in establishing a rate. How long will the job take? How long is a reasonable amount of time for a person to provide the service? And it requires that information about remuneration must be kept. It requires a person paying someone for services to keep good records. And it goes on to say that those records must be available to a labour inspector. So far, I'm not intellectually challenged by any of this, I must say. I mean, I make no immodest claims to superior intellect, but I'm finding this quite straightforward to comprehend. So it goes on to say that in the event that it is found by an inspector or some other that a person has not been rewarded sufficiently and reasonably and fairly, that the person paying the amount may be taken to task and obliged to pay compensation, in effect, to top up the payment that person has received to meet a reasonable minimum standard. None of that challenges me, sir. None of it do I find unreasonable, unfair or difficult to incorporate into existing law. It may well be, and Mr Parker has very modestly conceded, this bill may be far from perfect. This is the purpose of select committees, to make bills better and to bring them back into government, into the House in a form we can then integrate them into the existing statutes. So nothing in this do I find difficult or that would in any way disrupt the existing employment situation in New Zealand in any negative way. So I must refer to some of the majority view of the Select Committee, who identified the printing and distribution sector as potentially almost a victim, potentially, of this bill. They highlight the fact that the digital age has made things slightly difficult for the print industry. That's a given. Disruptive technologies come along and do create challenges for older forms of technology. In this form, the digital form has made print a difficult thing. It goes on to say that in brief, and I'm running out of time, so very briefly it implies that if we pay these people too much, the entire print industry could collapse. If we give a few more dollars to people's stuffing letterboxes with leaflets, with local papers and the like, the entire print industry could be brought to its knees. Somehow I doubt that, sir. I do not see that as being a credible proposition. I think it's disappointing.
Sir Moroney.